Well, I went to school at Appalachian State University, and I was in wood technology there, which is basically a furniture making class. And I met my wife there, and we both graduated from there and moved back to Saluda, North Carolina, to thinking in terms of building furniture for a living. And I borrowed a friend's wood lathe and fell in love with the process and realized that I was better suited to the lathe as in turning because it's more intuitive. You know, I found that I was comfortable with the subtractive process, which is what wood turning is. And so I started selling my furniture making equipment and buying wood lathes. I was doing whatever I could to make a living at the time. And I started turning bowls and vases and that sort of thing in a much more traditional way. And then I apprenticed with Mark Lindquist for more than a year, in 1984. And that was in New Hampshire. We moved to New Hampshire for a year and a half. Had two small children at the time. Mark's work was challenging to the wood turning community, and he used a lot of chainsaws and that sort of thing. And I fell in love with it. I really liked his work. Having said that, it was a very tough year because, I had a family there and I was expected to be on call pretty much 24/7. But when I came back here, I started playing with the lathe more as a carving tool as opposed to something that would simply turn round objects, bowls and vases and that sort of thing. And I developed a system of using multiple axes on the lathe to create objects that weren't inherently symmetrical. Nobody else was doing anything like I was doing. So I created my own kind of niche for myself, and I just continued on this process, still using the vessel as a reference point, but increasingly getting away from vessel-oriented forms and much more sculptural forms. My mother was sick for most of my life. I didn't really understand it at the time, but beautiful objects for her were really a balm to her, brought her great comfort. And I just kind of absorbed that idea from her. And I felt like the work that I was doing was challenging enough. It was challenging people enough, for one thing, but also I was interested in making objects that appealed to one's aesthetic. And I felt like the statement that I was making, that you can make a statement by making beautiful objects. And that was the driving kind of force behind the work. My mother, who I was very close to, I wanted to challenge people, but I didn't want to offend them, I guess is the best way to put it. So I always felt like that wood is alive. It expands and contracts, and you have to deal with that. And as a material, I found that recognizing the rhythm in the materials, which is kind of established by the seasons, spring, summer, fall, winter, and the rhythm of the process really came together in terms of the work that I was doing. I liked that, particularly when I started painting the wood. And when I started painting them, I would sandblast them or burn the pieces. When you sandblast a piece of white oak, for example, the summer growth sandblasts deeper than the winter growth. That's because it's softer. It grows faster and it's softer. And then paint over it, and then come back and sand through the paint. The paint lays down in the summer growth, and the winter growth comes forward. So you really can see the grain. It really brings the grain pattern out, and you can see the rhythm of that material, and it really makes it pop. I had discovered Barnett Newman's color paintings, and just really fell in love with them. One of his ideas was he had a line down the middle of his colors, and one side of the painting represented the subject, and one side represented the object. And those might sound like those are the same thing, but they're not. In my work, I really was interested in the power of a single line, and how a line could express attitude or emotion. So I started doing what I described as wellness lines in the work. And one side of the object would be, the Parkinson's, and the other side would be me pushing back. It was just a reminder for me to push back. my life is defined by allowing it to happen. And this came about as a friendship with some folks that were involved in philanthropy in the field. And I started doing some kind of pro bono work for them, just kind of going around the country and seeing what was happening. And that led to me actually working for them. Folks knew that they could call and talk to me, and I could give them a sense of whether or not what they were talking about was, would be possibility for funding. Just was so rewarding because, it put me in touch with schools and institutions that are doing fantastic work, in terms of educating people. Really, that all started in the late 80s, and I've been doing it ever since. 25 years with the Center for Craft Creativity and Design. And getting to see this work that's being made by seniors coming out of university. These are the Wingate Lamar scholarships, and they're named after the Wingate Foundation and me. There was a time when I was in my 30s or 40s, people would talk about the demise of the American craft community, and I just never have bought into that. I just like, there's just too good a work being made out there that for us to not be able to sustain ourselves, and that comes from these young people. There's so much good work being made out there, and I'm surrounded by people that are so dedicated to making work that I feel good about that. I feel good about the future of craft. I think that we really have something to give, and we have a responsibility to give. I think we have a responsibility to use craft, any kind of social justice area that you can think of, and I like seeing people move from one phase of their lives in crafts to another phase of their lives in crafts. Because it always, good craftspeople, they're always growing. They're always seeing something new and different. That seeing the world, through that lens is really, really important, I think.